Hey, Happy New Year. A little late for that, I suppose, but yeah, I've got an episode today where I just kind of reflect on the first few months of our podcast on 2025 and, some things I'm thinking about for 2026. And I want this one to be interactive. My email address is in the show notes. I'd love to hear from you, and I explain that a little more in the recording. So tune in, send me an email, let me know what you got going on, what you're thinking, what your church is up to. Love to hear from you. So thanks so much for listening, and here we go. Happy 2026. Hey there, this is Matt with Passing the Pulpit podcast, and today I want to do a little bit of looking back and looking ahead as we come into a new year, and we've got a few months under our belt of, podcasting and talking to people and talking about the church, talking about ministry, just all kinds of things. And so I felt like it was a good time, a good opportunity to reflect just a little bit on what we have talked about, and then to kind of, look ahead, theorize on what I hope is coming this year, and to talk a little bit about how this podcast, the direction of it, the interviews, the conversations, the things that I think will be important moving into 2026. So like a lot of you, as we're heading into a new year, we're thinking about the things we have done and the things we want to do. As I think about the podcast, the first few months and the first episodes that we've done together, there was a lot of talk about AI. I don't think that's going to stop. I think that's going to continue. I continue, on a regular basis to have conversations, as I'm sure you do, with people about AI, and kind of realizing and see, this is moving at a very fast pace now. I actually have listened to a few people discuss it who are in the business and in the middle of the development, and the astronomical pace at which AI is moving, I think would be very, very difficult to wrap our heads around, how quickly it's growing, how quickly it's evolving. And so we are moving at breakneck speeds, so to speak. So that, I think, is going to continue to be a key point of conversation, and a lot of questions, a lot of opportunities for ministries to maybe host forums, luncheons, open question, open-ended conversations with, ministry members and church members and small group leaders and anyone that wants to talk about it. So I think that's going to be important. Another specific thing that came up quite a bit was the idea that, ministerial budgets have changed quite a bit, and they're going to continue to change, if I had to imagine. Maybe that's related to AI, maybe not. I don't know. Again, that's a conversation I would love to have with other leaders in this coming year. But the truth is that churches have financial challenges, and the church landscape, I thinking back over 15, 20 years, I remember we were having this conversation 15, 20 years ago, that the boomer generation was dying off, and that they were the number one contributor to church funds and church bank accounts. And then you move through Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and onward, and the giving has kind of gone down incrementally through those generations to the point we're at now, where, ministries are having to get quite creative. I know a church in town that we are a part of and that we spend a lot of time with has opened up its doors to local schools, to businesses. And so they're trying to rethink how to use the spaces. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, again, that's a conversation I'd love to have, someone who's in that space, that church business architecture, business on mission, business as mission. Those are conversations we've had that I continue to hope to have. One of the things that surprised me, or one of the things that really stuck with me, I should say, was how would I say it? The way I would say it is that I shouldn't have been surprised by this, but it was refreshing to hear that many of the leaders I spoke with to talk about their willingness to delegate. And I guess what I would say is that what they learned was that delegation was an imperative point of ministry, not something that could be ignored. And then several folks I talked to specifically said that when they began to delegate, their ministry changed for the better. So when they really began to delegate, when they really let go of control, when they really let others lead and let others lead in ministry and birth ideas and offer up suggestions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, then the ministry itself got significantly better and healthier and onward. So that, I think, is an important thing to remember, that as I think about passing the pulpit, as I think about offering wisdom to other ministers or folks that may be younger in ministry, that point I think is salient. It's don't wait on delegation. Don't make the mistake of wrapping your hands too tightly around the ministry that you're doing. Let go and let others. Trust God. Trust the discipleship process. Trust the programs and the things you have built in, and let others lead. Let others, again, birth their ideas and try ministry and try leading. Try even, I know this is kind of like this is probably, I don't know how to say it, a sacred cow in some spaces, but the idea of letting others practice preaching, how do you do that? And how do you invite others to hone that craft and to get their reps in, so to speak? So that was something that I thought was really powerful that came up multiple times. I think we have a resilient community. I think that those in ministry, there's a reason why Paul says in the book of Ephesians, don't grow weary in doing good, because ministry is wearisome. Ministry is tiring at times. It's overwhelming at times. And so Paul reminds us, don't grow weary. Keep the faith, keep pressing on, keep fighting the good fight, because our struggles, they teach us things about ourselves. There is a gift in adversity, and there's a gift in the difficult nature of things. And so I know you feel that too. I know you understand. I know you understand adversity. I know you understand struggle, suffering. That is something that is common among all humans and all churches, no matter where you're serving, what city you're in, what state you're in, or even maybe what country you're in. We all suffer. We all face adversity. And maybe it's important to be thinking about, instead of trying to get out of it, trying to pray in a way of, God, don't let me through this until I learn what you have for me here. God, don't let me out of this until I am formed into the type of leader you want me to be. Let that adversity, let that suffering, let that frustration birth something beautiful and new inside of you. So that's again something I think we can all relate to, is the difficulty of ministry. And again, like I said, I think we're a resilient group. The people who are in ministry, pastors, leaders, volunteers, we're resilient, and that has as much to do with God's empowerment in us as anything else. The Holy Spirit is good to us. Jesus is good to us. God is good to us. If there's one thing that this last year has taught me, maybe personally and professionally, I would encourage you to listen to the interview I did with my wife at the very end of last year. We were talking about healthy habits and rhythms, and if there's one thing that was very true, it's that the little habits that we form have massive impacts. The little habits that we form have massive impacts. So I think a great question to ask as you look ahead is, what little things can you do in ministry that could have really huge future impacts? Sometimes I think we have to, be baptizing 100 people every Sunday, or 100% of our church congregation has to be involved in small groups. Maybe we don't have to think in such massive terms. Maybe we can have more tangible goals like, hey, can we just get everyone in this room to invite one person to church this quarter? Can we just get everyone in this room to attend, a small group one time this quarter? Can we just get people trying on the things of faith? Maybe that's a better way to think about it. Maybe it's these small steps, but those are good things, and I think they're good things. But again, I think that what's powerful is the idea that it's the small steps, the small choices and habits that we form that really do lead to just massive, massive shifts in ministry and personal life. So that's something kind of, that was a big idea that's going to definitely carry over. I know for me, hopefully for you too. So those are a few things as I reflect and as I look forward to. But what are things you're hopeful for? What themes are you thinking through, and where is your church headed this coming year? I'd love to hear from you. I'm going to put my email address in the show notes. Email me. I'd love to hear what kind of things you're noodling on and thinking through, what kind of vision you're casting for your church. Are you seeing more young people come back to church? Are you seeing more people involved in small groups? Are you seeing, what are you seeing in your church? I'm curious. And so I'm sure that informs what you're hopeful for, but also personally, how are you doing as a minister? How are you doing as a pastor? How are you protecting your time and guarding your spiritual life? How are you guarding your home life? How are you, taking care of your own internal spiritual heart and mind and soul and rhythms? How are you working through that? So I'd love to hear that. Again, I'm going to put my email address in the show notes. I would love to hear from you anytime. So please, send some ideas. I'd love to hear it. But what about, big picture perspective, practical next steps? Here's some more granular thought. What's one spiritual rhythm that you want to embrace in this new year? Is it Sabbath? Is it solitude? Is it prayer? Is it silence? Is it giving? Maybe it's exercise. I mean, is it too crazy to think that exercising could be a spiritual discipline? Is there some truth and power in taking care of this spiritual tent that we have to live in? I think there probably is. And I think that maybe a lot of us in ministry have neglected the tents that God has given to us. So what's one rhythm you want to cultivate in this coming year? What's a core value that you want to lean into? Maybe you've never even thought of that, but what are the core values of your community? Are you about giving? Are you about serving? Are you about food, feeding the hungry? Are you about, helping the refugee and the immigrant? Are you about, holding up? Do you support maybe the local school systems around you? I mean, the local church is so amazing. There's so many things that local churches are a part of and participate in. But what's your thing? What thing do you want to press into? So those are some things, I know I'm listening to. Actually, on a personal note, my wife had this idea. I think she saw it online, but she had our family build out bingo cards for 2026. And so it's like, I think it's 5x5 squares. So 5 squares across, 5 squares down. So 25 total squares. The middle square is a free square. That's your birthday. So that's, you get to celebrate that. But the other 24 squares are things you want to accomplish. And so it could be things like, I want to get 5,000 steps in every day. I want to read the entire Bible this year. But as a ministry leader, what would your squares look like? Would it be, I want to see 10 new small group leaders at my church. I want to see, 20 more baptisms at church this year. I want our church to start a YouTube channel and start broadcasting. I mean, there's so many things you could do, but what would your squares look like? So I invite you to maybe think about that. I thought that was personally kind of fun. And we were a little shocked to see that our teenagers, I think, thought it was fun. Yeah, I think they did. So that was cool to see, so bingo, 2026 bingo, try it out. It was a good time. So that could be something to think through. But as you consider too, what are you leaving behind in this past year? I think this is just me, but I think something I've been noticing online over the past few years is I feel like for the past years, especially, every time a year ends, I see a lot of people saying, "Oh, thank God that one's over. Oh, thank God that, I can't wait to get into the new year. I can't wait to put these old problems behind me." And I just kind of wonder about that a little bit. Isn't it so true that every year, every new year is going to bring new problems? And every year we're going to have more than enough reason to say, good riddance to 2025 or 24, 23, whatever. But man, I think it's important to consider the good things that happen too. And instead of kind of looking at it like good riddance, I hope to never have to talk to you again. I hope that there's things we can say like, hey, thank you for teaching me those things. And that may fall into the category of what are you leaving behind that you could celebrate? What things have you learned? And maybe even going back to the adversity conversation, the suffering, what adversity or suffering did you possibly experience in 2025 that helped to form you into, the type of person and leader that you are right now? Because that could be a good thing. My wife says failure is just a point of data. Doesn't have to be anything more than that. And I think she's right about that. So with that in mind, what are you inviting in the future? What would you like to see happen? So that's where I think resolutions and goals can come to play. But then again, like I said, what's a small thing that you could do? What's a small habit that you could form? I think a lot about in Mark 1:35, right, where Jesus got up early and went off by himself and prayed. In my mind, that is a 100% valid habit that could be formed that would be unbelievably powerful. And what if it was only once a week, maybe? What if one time a week you got up really early and you went off to a solitary place and prayed? And even in that practice, you may be practicing multiple things at one time: the discipline of prayer, the discipline of silence, the discipline of solitude. If you did that on a Sabbath, you'd also be practicing Sabbath. You could be hitting 4 spiritual practices in one event, which would, I think, be amazing. But again, as I'm kind of going roundabout saying, again, I think what's a small thing that you can do? And there too, I'd love to hear what small thing you might be starting. So I'd love to hear what you're thinking about. I'd love to hear what small thing you're starting. I'll say again, my email address is in the show notes. Hit me up. I'd love to hear about it. I'd even love to talk to you on the phone if you want. That'd be amazing. But we have an opportunity with every new year to kind of build new momentum, to set up some new goals. And one thing about saying goodbye to a previous year is we can also say goodbye to maybe some bad habits we've formed. You could say, hey, I don't want to sleep in past this time anymore. I don't want to waste my Saturday. Or, I'll be personal in my own life. I know that my commitment to a work-free, mostly screen-free Sabbath has really slipped. And so that's something I'm thinking about as I want to really re-engage with a very untethered Sabbath. I don't want to be tied to work. I don't want to be tied to things that feel like work. I want the Sabbath to be restful and worshipful, as John Mark Comer says. What is restful? What is worshipful? So I want those things to be in my Sabbath. And so that's something I'm thinking about. But you have an opportunity to build new momentum. And so whatever that might be, lean into it. Philippians 1:6, right? And he will bring to completion the good work that he has begun. So we trust that God will bring us to completion, whatever that process looks like. We trust that he will continue the good work that he began. We trust that he will finish what he has started in us and through us, around us. And I think that means not only personally, but I'll say professionally. And when I say that, I do mean ministerially. I think he will take church communities. He will complete the good works that he began in communities and in churches, in fellowships, in relationships. So much of what we do are living and breathing things. Our lives, our communities, our families, our relationships. So I do think God will bring to completion. So that's one thing I'm thinking about. So to kind of wrap up, hey, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what you're thinking. Love to tell you that with this podcast, as we kind of move forward, I hope to have more conversations about the things that matter to you, the things that matter in the church. What is AI going to look like? What are we going to be preaching about? What are people seeing? Are the young people coming back to church? Are they getting involved? What is that looking like? And how are people doing? How are ministers taking care of themselves? How are pastors, minding their own fields and families and homes, and what are some of the practices that have been powerful? So hoping to have just more and more conversations about that. And one area that I am passionate about is just thinking about bivocational leaders. And I'm curious to, have some further conversation with folks who have found ways to earn income outside of church to help fund their ministry problems. So, how have you found to create income that you can then do the ministry that God has called you to? Tent making, so to speak. What are the ways that your ministry looks like Paul's, where it was rhythmic, and sometimes he was out planting churches, sometimes he was back, tent making tents and paying the bills, so to speak, and then going back out. So what does that look like? So let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Can't wait to continue on this podcast journey with you all. Thank you so much for listening, downloading, sharing. Join us on Instagram. Join us, in the chat. Join us wherever you might find us. We'd love to have you. And I'm looking forward to 2026 with you all. Thank you again so much. This is Passing the Pulpit. This is Matt, and I hope you're doing awesome. We'll talk to you more soon. Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with another pastor or ministry leader who you think might benefit from this conversation. And if you're looking for more tools and resources to help you preach and lead with confidence, be sure to check out sermoncentral.com/podcast. Sermon Central is the largest online resource hub for pastors and ministry leaders. From illustrations to outlines to media, you'll find everything you need to preach and lead effectively. So check out sermoncentral.com/podcast, where you'll even find a special podcast listener discount on our membership pricing. Check it out and stay tuned for our next episode.